Hello guys, are you able to hear us? Can you confirm through the chat window? And we welcome to you .NETix online webinar through YouTube and Facebook. And today we are having Mr. Santosh Yadav, and Santosh sir will tell you about the Node.js, like how we can build the end-to-end application using the Node.js. So what are the queries you will have about the Node.js, about the JavaScript? You can ask him. He's here to discuss all the things regarding the JavaScript and Node.js. Okay, thank you for confirming, like you are able to hear us. Yes, Santosh, so now we can start.
Yeah, just let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, I think you need to just add my screen to the stream.
I edit.
Okay. Yeah, hey everyone. I hope you are having a great day and enjoying your Sunday. And thanks for joining us. So today we are going to discuss about Node.js. That's the agenda for the day. We'll be discussing about what Node.js is, where you can actually apply Node.js, and everything related to. In case you have any questions, you can ask those questions. So that's what we are going to do. Before we start, I'll just introduce myself. Just a second. Yep. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Santosh Yadav, and I'm one of the Google developer expert from India. I recently became a GitHub star, so it was just announced a day ago, yesterday. And I'm also a consultant, mentor, and trainer. I mostly work with .NET Tricks. That's what I do. So let's see the agenda which we are going to do today. So we'll be having a small introduction to Node.js. We'll discuss about V8 JavaScript engine and why server-side JavaScript, right? So that's really important. Then we'll discuss about architecture, event loop, which is of course very important to understand as well, and Node.js versus other server-side frameworks. I'm sure most of you might have learned about other languages before you came to Node.js, maybe like .NET, Java, or any other language, right? And we'll see where you can apply Node.js as well as, and if possible we will also, I mean, most what we are going to discuss is mostly we'll take try to answer your questions, because that's what you that was the main agenda of having this particular webinar. So let's see what Node.js is, right? So most of the people, or most of the developers, when they come to Node.js, they think about it as a language, which is of course a little bit confusing, right? So Node.js is not a programming language, just to make it clear. It's actually a runtime. So you might have learned about some other. Uh,
Santosh, sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can you play this PPT? That would be more clear.
One second, I think I'm just trying to do that. I'm not sure why I'm not able to do it. Okay.
Guys,
Sorry.
how many people are from the background of JavaScript here? Can you tell us?
Okay, that was another screen. Okay, I'll just share the slides with you. Just a
How many
second.
people are from the JavaScript background? Like how many are willing to learn the Node.js? Just switch the presenter screen also. There is option switch presenter screen on the
Uh,
top menu.
okay, and slideshow or
The
this
second
one,
one,
right?
second option, second.
Okay.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Now
Okay.
it's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So as we discussed, right? So it's a runtime for JavaScript. So what do you mean by runtime for JavaScript? You might have heard about other runtimes, like the first runtime you might have heard about is something known as Java. Java actually is a programming language, and then there is a runtime also available, which is known as Java Runtime Environment, JRE, right? So what we used to do is we used to write our Java code, and then we used to use JRE to actually uh, run our code on your desktop, right? So you can actually run your Java code anywhere once you write it. So you can actually go ahead and write your code on Windows and take the same code base on a Linux machine and run it again. That was possible using Java. So earlier when Node.js was not available, the only way to actually execute your JavaScript code was, it was, you can actually go ahead and open your browser, you can just include your link, the JavaScript file link, and then you can execute it, right? Which was actually a tedious task to do. I mean, we cannot use JavaScript anything apart from, or anywhere apart from your browser. So that was the biggest problems. And Node.js actually took the advantage of, there was a team in the Google who were working on Chrome, and then they ended up writing one runtime which you may know as V8 runtime. V8 runtime was actually V8 runtime is something which actually drives your Chrome browser. So internal, right? You have Chromium, and then Chromium is used by now Chrome as well as the latest version of Internet Explorer, right? So both uses Chromium. So V8 engine was written to run those and power Chrome, you can say. So Node.js team, the creator of Node.js, what he decided to do is he decided to actually take the advantage of V8 engine, and then ended up writing runtime by using which you can actually write the JavaScript code and then compile it on your desktop. Or maybe if I go to, let's say, if I write the code on my Windows machine, I can take the same code on Linux machine or Mac, and I can just compile the same code. It will work, right? So we went from browser to desktop. Now you can actually run your JavaScript code on desktop application as well. And this is what allows you to actually write server-side programming using Node.js. So we often get confused that it's a programming language, which is not. It's just runtime, which is actually allowing us to actually run your JavaScript code and uh, on your desktop, on your desktop. So that's what it is allowing you to do. And it is open source, and as mentioned, cross platform, right? So what you can do is you can actually run your code on Mac as well as Linux. You don't have to change your code. There are few packages. There are few packages which are like depend upon the environment. For example, there is something known as cross environment, where maybe some implementation may change because you know, right? Or file system, for example, file system also differs based on the environments. For example, Linux, the file system on Linux is different, and if I go to Windows, their file system is different. So there are few packages which has those. Otherwise, most of the packages work seamlessly on any platform. And as mentioned, it uses the V8 JavaScript engine and used to build fast and scalable network application as well, because Node.js also allows you, it actually gives you packages by using which you can actually make HTTP calls. You can actually connect to your ports, the local ports, maybe TCP port or any other port on your machine, and you can get access to those as well. So in case I want to transfer some data on TCP, that's possible because we have the access, we have the packages available, because C++, the language which actually drives your V8 engine, right? And Node.js is also, there are few packages which are actually also written in C++ to interact with your file system. So they allow you to actually talk to those low level programs, right? So it actually goes ahead and converts to local, or you can say machine language, which can be understood by everyone. So that's what we can do. V8 engine, of course, let's talk about V8 engine, because if there was no V8 engine, there might have not been any Node.js as well. So V8 engine was actually first created inside Google, and to actually drive the Chrome browser. And I'm sure most of you love Chrome browser, even though it consumes a lot of memory. But yeah, I mean that Chrome browser, the introduction of Chrome browser was a game changer at all. I mean, that was, I think, one of the biggest thing which happened in uh, last 10 to 12 years, because if no V8 engine, no Node.js, no Angular, no React, right? So you can understand, you can just think about the impact which V8 engine has made. It was written in C++, as you already aware of, as I already mentioned. And it supports ES5. ES5 is one of the JavaScript version which was written, which was earlier available, and you might have written a lot of ES5 code, and now we have actually ES6 code which is available, and it uses just in time. So I'll just show you some examples as well, where you can write some JavaScript code and run it locally, right? So that's what we are going to see. And it compiles your JavaScript to native machine code. One of the reason your Chrome browser actually can request for more memory whenever you are running it is because it converts it to the native machine code, right? So it can actually go ahead and talk to your microprocessor or memory and take the or utilize the more memory, which was not possible when Internet Explorer was there. That was the biggest problem, right? So when there were times that whenever you used to run your application, after some time it used to get hang. That was the problem with ISO. Now in Chrome you may never notice it, but you may see the spike in your consumption of your RAM. And you can actually use it anywhere. It's open source. That's what Node.js team did. So they actually took it, wrote a wrapper, and they are using it. And it is used by many open source projects. So you can see some example: Node.js, MongoDB. So there are few examples of using Node.js, right? So now coming to the point, why we need to actually run server-side JavaScript. That was the main use case by why Node.js came into the picture. Earlier, if we talk about the stack, like your development stack earlier, so you had choices like, if I'm using Java, I have to use Java to write my maybe server-side code using JSP. In case I'm not doing that, I might have to actually use Java to write my APIs and maybe drive it in other ways. For example, using jQuery and HTML and CSS, right? So that was one of the most powerful stack which we had in those days. I think jQuery was again one of the game changer, I would say. So similarly, now once Node.js was available, what you can do is you can actually move the entire stack using JavaScript. So you don't have to worry about go ahead and learn Java or .NET or any other programming language. You can just learn JavaScript. You can apply it in the entire stack. So you can actually use it for your server-side programming languages. In case you want to just design your entire website using Node.js, that's possible because there are a few frameworks, for example, Express, which supports some rendering engines. So you can actually go ahead and write your entire website using Node.js, of course, the Express.js framework. And you can also write your APIs. So Express.js, Next.js, these are some frameworks which are available to write your APIs as well. So this is what allows you to or this is what is the advantage, right? So you can actually move the entire stack to only one programming language rather than you learning multiple programming languages and moving on, right? So JavaScript can also be used for desktop application, and it's I would say it's cross platform, right? So because as we have already mentioned that you can actually go ahead and run your JavaScript code anywhere once written on any of the platform, right? So if I'm writing it on Windows, I can actually take it anywhere. It applies the same. So I can actually create an application. I can use it as a mobile app. I can use it as a desktop app. I can also create it as a web app. So there are many frameworks which are available and which allows you to do that. For example, Ionic. Ionic allows you to actually convert your application to your PWA. It allows you to actually convert it to maybe native mobile apps for Android and iOS as well. Java and Electron is something which you can use to create your desktop application. So that's possible. Native, there is another example, right? So React Native, it can be also used to create your native mobile apps. So of course, the area is very huge, right? So you can apply it anywhere you like. And these are few apps which are built on Electron. You may see Visual Studio Code, and I'm not sure if you know that Microsoft Teams is also, I think, built on Electron as well. So there are many applications, Slack, Atom. There are many, right? So Postman, all these are actually built using Electron, and most of them are open source. For example, if I talk about VS Code, that's an open source uh, the application you have. I can actually go ahead and see the code on GitHub, and you can also contribute in case you think that there is some issues which you have figured out. You can actually go ahead and do that. That's possible. So this is Node.js architecture, but let's go back to the VS Code, and I will try to show a simple example what you can actually achieve using Node.js. So you can just create a JavaScript file here. For example, let's say I'll just add a file, add.js, right? So, or let's call it as calculator, right? So let's create a file called calculator.js. Earlier, we used to actually write the code and run it on browser. Let's see how to do it on your desktop. So you have to write the you have to just write the normal JavaScript code. So you can post your question. I will take it, no problem. So let's create a function. So let's call this function as add. and this function takes two parameters, right? Simple example. I'm not going to get take some complex examples right now. Maybe I can take something related to file system later on. So I'll say return, and then you can actually call, let's say, this function add, and I would say, okay, pass two parameters, and I'll just do console.log to print the value. And let's see how to run this application, right? So we'll open the integrate terminal, which we have here, and you have to make sure that you have Node.js installed. Let me just guide you to the page where you can install it. So this Node.js.org, this is where always there are two versions which will be available. So you have LTS version and you have current version. Current version is which is like ongoing development. So in case you are using it for production, always go ahead and use LTS. So right now I am going to use LTS and I've already installed it. So let's see how you can verify it if it is installed. So here you can find using node-v. Right now I have 12.19.0 and I have not updated as per the latest version. I'll do that later on maybe. And we have also something known as npm, which is available. We'll discuss about what npm is later on, but these two things which should be installed. Npm gets installed when you install node. Let's run this application, right? So you can actually go ahead and say node and your file name, and this is how you can actually compile this code locally. So you can see the output 25, which is possible because we are running this code right now on desktop rather than actually running it on browser. This is what Node.js allows us to do. So let's move on to the slides, and let's talk a little bit about the Node.js architecture. But let's take some questions. You can post your questions, I'll take it. So Mangesh has a question: how TypeScript is different than Node.js? Good question. One question is Node.js and Angular and React are same? No. Okay, I'll just take these two questions now. So the first question I'll take is Mayur from Mayur. So Mayur has question: no, is Node.js and Angular and React are same? No. Node.js is a runtime as discussed, right? Angular and React are framework and libraries which are written in respective programming language. For example, Angular is written using TypeScript. And if I go to React is written using a language called Flow, I think, or JavaScript. I'm not sure, but I think it was Flow. So React is written using Flow, which is again another variation of actually JavaScript, which is available there. And Mangesh, I'll come back to your question how TypeScript is different than Node.js, because let's talk about this Node.js architecture which we have. So if you see the architecture diagram of Node.js, let me go back. So here you have Node.js APIs which are available. You have buffer, event, file system. So there are multiple packages which are available as part of Node.js itself. So in case I want to use something, for example, let's say if I want to use file system, right? So you can actually go ahead and do that using require keyword, and you can say, okay, I need to access F file system. So you don't have to do, or you don't have to install these packages because they are native packages which gets installed with once you install Node.js. So you can say fs dot, and you can see, okay, there is something known as read file. You can pass which file you want to read. Let's try to do that. So I'll say this is test.txt. Right, so this is one txt file which I have created, and I'll say this is hello. Because of course, in case you are running a JavaScript code on your browser, you won't be able to access file system. File systems are not available on your browsers. There are few implementation which is happening. In case you are interested into that, you should actually go ahead and read a little bit about Project Fugu, which is actually driven by the Google team. I'll just mention the spelling here. So in case you can see, it's FUGU, Fugu. And once you search about it, you will get a page which is related to Project Fugu, what they are trying to do. So they are trying to actually add some capabilities on your web. For example, in case you want to actually read SMS they are adding that capability. In case you want to read and update file, they are also adding that capability. In case you want to actually work with your contacts, right? So in mobile, you might have seen that whenever you click on this call button, you get all the entire list, something similar but for web. So that's what Project Fugu is all about. Very interesting project, I would say. And here read file, you can say, okay, which files, so here there are parameters which you need to pass. So you have the first parameter is the path. So let's try to pass test.txt, and then there are some encodings which we can skip, and which is, you can see encoding, null, flag, string, everything is optional. So you can skip that, and maybe you can just pass a callback function. And here there are two things which you get: response and error. And then you can just write, let's see what we get in response. And there are various methods. So for example, read file synchronous. By default, it is asynchronous. So you can see, okay, right now it says, okay, this file does not exist because I made a typo. So I'm saying, okay, this is test.txt, and you can see, okay, it says right now null because I'm not passing the encoding. What encoding I have to use? It's UTF-8, if I'm not wrong. So I can just pass here. Encoding is UTF-8 files, and let's try to run it now. Okay, somehow we are not getting the output, but this is, I mean, just to give you an idea, right? So this is how you can use. So you have read file synchronous, because all the methods which Node.js offers by default are asynchronous. So they run asynchronous, but in case you want to run it synchronously, you can do that using read file sync. So that's possible. So Node.js allows you to actually interact with your file system as well. There are multiple packages. You have something known as HTTP as well. So in case I want to make HTTP calls from my Node.js application, I can actually use require and then use HTTP. And you can call get method, post method, everything is available on HTTP. But you don't have to generally do that, because you get a lot of packages, a lot of what you can say, the third-party packages or frameworks which actually hides this complexity, right? So they don't expose entire complexity to you. So you can just work with minimal API, and then you can you can create your application. For example, if I talk about Express.js allows you to create your web application or APIs. They have their own web APIs. They have their own methods, classes, which allows you to do that. If I go to Express Next.js, which is another implementation where you can create APIs, it allows you to actually quickly create your APIs using minimal configuration, right? So you don't have to write entire code by your own. This is something which is already written inside those packages. So let's take a question from Mangesh, who says how TypeScript different than Node.js. So let's talk about, because of course TypeScript is like huge, huge demand, if I would say, because a lot of developers who actually used to write JavaScript code are now moving into TypeScript. So if I have to talk about TypeScript and Node.js, no, they are not related. TypeScript is one of the language which you can write. So you can actually use TypeScript anywhere. In case you want to create an web application, of course, you can go ahead and write your TypeScript code and convert it to JavaScript. So if I have to tell you about TypeScript, it's actually a superset. So it's a superset of JavaScript. So whatever TypeScript code you write, it gets converted to JavaScript, and then Node.js can actually come into picture and run your JavaScript code after that. For example, let's say I'll just create a new file, which is TypeScript file. So test.ts, right? So this is a TypeScript file which I have created. And the reason I will be able to compile it is I already have TypeScript installed. So how you can do, or how you can install TypeScript is, you can just use npm install and TypeScript -g. So this is how you can install TypeScript. So you can just run this command and a TypeScript version will be installed. And you also need a configuration file, so which you can do actually using by tsc-init. And once you do this, you will get a tsconfig.json file. So this configuration file will be used to compile, or you can say transform your TS file to JS file. Here you have multiple targets. I'll talk a little bit about the different version of JavaScript you have available. So let's go ahead and see. You can actually convert your output to any version of JavaScript. So you can see you have ES 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? So there are multiple versions. In case you want backward compatibility, you can just go ahead and say choose ES3 or ES5. ES5 is something which is supported by all the browser, which is available. But the only drawback of using ES5 is your final code which gets generated is will be always bigger. So most of the browser today, as of today, supports ES 2015 or ES 2015 or ES6, whatever you want to choose. So most of the, even if you are working on Angular code, you will find that the target is by default ES 2015. So you can just select, okay, ES 2015 is the version which I want to target. Basically what we are saying is whenever we run our compiler for TypeScript, I want the code to be generated to JavaScript, the JavaScript version ES 2015. And it has its own advantage, right? So I'll just give you a simple example. Let's see how we write a class in ES6. So this is class syntax which we generally use in other programming languages. In ES6 also you actually do the same. So if I create a class, let's call it as this class as employee, and define some properties. So I'll say ID, which is number, name, which is string, and email, right? So these are three properties which we have. And you can also use constructors here. So that's a keyword. You don't have to do anything else. And maybe some methods here. So I'll say this is get emp name. And here I can actually just say this dot name, right? So I'm just returning this dot name from here and return it. And here I'll just create a new instance. So I'm sure the first thing which you learn about OOPS is how to create a new instance of a class. So if I have to do that, I'll just say, okay, const emp equals to new employee. And okay, some typo. And then you can say emp dot whatever property you want to access, right? So just let's do console.log emp. Let's see what we get. It will actually give you all the properties and methods which are available on your EMP. So it will give you function name, this, and properties, whatever which is available. So generally, what you do is TypeScript. You run a TSC command, which is TypeScript compiler, and it will convert your code to JS. So this is the JS file which gets created once we are into ES 2015. So you can see this is really small line of code, right? I mean, around 8-9 lines of code, and most of the this white spaces are removed, so you don't have that. But let's try to convert this code back to ES5, which was the case when we used to write our jQuery code. You may actually refer to this. So let's convert this to ES5 and see the code. So it is converted, but you have a lot of, I mean, the code looks really different, right? So you have function employee, then prototype.emp name, and then there is no class syntax, because this is the way we used to actually write classes in ES5. And I'm sure most of you, the developer who have worked in jQuery, knows this syntax. So this beautiful thing is called as IIFE, which is known as immediately invoked function expression. So as of today in ES6, you don't have to worry about this IFE or immediately invoke function expression until unless you really want to support your ES5 or the browser which is still running the older code, right? For example, i9, i10, and i11. They don't support the latest syntax, which is ES6 syntax, right? So in that case, you may have to just convert your target to ES5. So this is the difference, Mangesh. I hope I answered your question, and you are clear now what you mean, what is TypeScript and how you can use it. So Giftsana, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Performance-wise, Node.js better than Angular. So remember, Node.js and Angular is not similar, right? So Node.js is something which is a runtime. Angular uses Node.js to compile your code. Okay, so whenever you write some code, there is something known as Webpack, which is available, and Angular gives your code to TypeScript and then to Webpack to actually compile your code and make bundles which you can go ahead and execute on your web. So if you have to compare the performance, of course, Node.js is where it is allowing you to allowing your code to run on server side, but Angular is something which is using all the tools which are available and built on top of Node.js and compiling your application. So performance wise, if you have to compare, you may compare frameworks, right? So if you have to compare Angular, you may compare it against Vue.js or React, which is again other frameworks or libraries, or maybe Svelte. But you cannot compare Node.js and Angular. No, if you have to compare inside Node.js, there are multiple frameworks which are available. So if I have to talk about multiple frameworks which are available on Node.js for server side, is, let's say, you have Express.js, you have Next.js. These are the frameworks which you can compare. So always front end and back end, that they are two different things. Is Node.js good for large scale application, Raghavendra? I think that's pretty good question. Yes, they are. It matters how you are handling it, right? So, of course, if you see the examples, for example, Next.js, which is actually gaining a lot of ground, or Express.js has been used from a long time for mean stacks. You may have heard about mean stack or MERN stack. Actually, we used to actually use Express.js, right, in older days. Now, of course, there are many more frameworks which are available, and they're performing very good. So that's not a problem. Sashikant has a question: what is Electron? Electron is a framework which is available, Sashikant, which allows you to create desktop application using JavaScript. So you can actually write JavaScript code, but your application, you will be creating a desktop application. And some example is the VS Code which we are using right now is built on Electron. Ganesh has a question: do we need to install Node.js in mobile to run any app which is developed on Node.js? No, because JavaScript is something which can execute on any platform. So you don't have to install it again. You don't have to install Node.js. But in case you are running a server where you have deployed your Node.js based server side code, for example, Express.js or maybe Next.js, you may need Node.js to be installed. Bala has a question: what is the common JS here in TS config? I'm really feeling happy. A lot of questions, so please keep them coming. So module common JS, right? So this is one of the of course good question to ask, because here you can see it says specify module code generation. So you have multiple module code generation. For example, common JS, AMD, UMD, ES 2020, ES Next. So in older days, I mean, of course, as JavaScript improved, right, Node.js ecosystem improved, many people, many developers, what they try to do is they try to create a format which can run on your server as well as your client, because Node.js was created so you can actually run your code at server side, right? Your JavaScript code at server side. But that created a problem. What in case I want to run the same code on my browser? So I have to create two different types of files, one which can be executed on server and one which can be executed on client. So to avoid these issues, so there were few um, module formats which came into picture: AMD, UMD, System.js. They tried to resolve this issue, and then we nowadays we have CommonJS. And CommonJS is something which actually good fit for your server side coding. In case you want to actually create an application for server side, you can go ahead and use CommonJS. In case you are creating an application for your browser, recommended is ES 2015, or you can use ES Next. So this CommonJS right now denotes that we are actually writing our code for server side programming. In Angular, you will notice, in case you create a new application using Angular, you may notice this module is ES Next. So that's the reason it is Next, because we are actually writing an Angular application for browser, not the server. So I hope I answered your question, Bala. And Suresh has a question. Let's say application already developed by JavaScript and MVC core, then how we can go with Node.js, and what scenario we need to go? Can you give an example? I mean, so depends, right? So Suresh, what you have developed in JavaScript. So generally, if I talk about MVC core is where you create APIs, and in front end, if you talk about JavaScript, you might have used jQuery or simple HTML and jQuery, right? So that is something which you might have used. So you can actually replace your front end by using different libraries or frameworks which exist. For example, maybe you can replace your JavaScript part using Angular or React or Vue, but your API remains same. So you may never need to actually move on to Node.js. So you will be, if I talk about this front end frameworks and libraries, they use it like they use Node.js tools to actually compile your code. They don't actually use Node.js. It just needs to be installed on your machine, on your local machine, development machine, so you can create production build, you can run your application locally. That's why you need that. But if you're talking about converting your entire application on from MVC core to, let's say, API part, right? So I'm talking about API part now. And if you have to convert your MVC core API from .NET to Node.js, then you have to move on to the frameworks like Express.js or Next.js, or maybe there are a few more frameworks which are available to write the APIs. That's something which you might need to do. So choose the stack carefully. So maybe MVC.NET Core is already a good choice in case you are writing .NET, in case you are writing APIs. So I don't think so you should move away from MVC Core web APIs to Node.js. If you already have that, just use this. Maybe in case you want to convert your smaller APIs in future, you can go ahead and do that. That's not a problem. People are saying .NET Core is faster than Node.js. I'm not sure. Win Balraj. So .NET Core is faster than Node.js. It differs. I think there are some performance benchmarks which are available. Maybe you can go ahead and look for that. Which runs faster where, in which scenario. There are APIs. I think .NET Core is pretty fast, because last benchmark which I had seen was they were a lot ahead, right? So even if I go up and talk about the languages like Golang, or you have Rust, they are even faster. So it depends what is the scenario, right? But yes, .NET Core is pretty fast. Node.js supports all browser. Node.js is something which does not support browser, right? So why we are using Node.js is we wanted to create a server side language. We wanted to run our code at server side. So if I talk about what needs to be supported at browser, is your target, is the JavaScript version. So if I choose ES 2015, it means whatever code I'm writing will be supported by most of the browser as well. Uh, Indrajit has a question. As per knowledge, there is no class object in JS. It is only pure object. So if I talk about this class, right? So this class is actually just a syntax, right? Which is available in ES6. And in ES6, actually class syntax is used as it is. Internally, of course, it's an object internally. This is how everything is treated in JavaScript. So Hari Prasad has a question. So we can develop server-side and client-side app using Node.js, right? Exactly, that's what we are doing, right? So if I talk about Angular, you can create your entire front end, compile the code locally, and then you can deploy it anywhere. If I go to backend part, you can use Express.js or Next.js to write your APIs, and that's it. That's why we are not seeing JS in, but if we style function. That's Indrajit. So that Indrajit says that's why we are not seeing class in JS. But if we style function for immediately, it was available in ES5, the older version. Now it's not available anymore. So you don't have to write if you can just write class syntax and it will work in browser as well. For example, I can just maybe this is browser, right? So I can just go to inspect, and in console I can just write class employee, and you can see this works. It works. So this class syntax is valid syntax inside your browser as well. How we can connect DB from Node.js? Okay, cool. That's good question. So in case you want to do that, I will ask you. I will just this is not. So in Express.js, if you go to the Express.js documentation, you will find there is something known as guide, and you can go to database integration. There are already a lot of the databases which are already mentioned here, and they have given the packages which can be used to connect to the database. For example, Cassandra, right? So Cassandra has something, Cassandra driver. In case you want to connect to SQL server, so you have something known as TDS which is available. If you want to connect to Mongo, you have MongoDB packages is available, right? So Oracle has Oracle DB. So these are all packages which are available. You can easily integrate with any database, and even the sample code is available here. Just go ahead and write it and try to, maybe in case you have Oracle installed locally, just try to see if it works. Or in case you are trying to connect it to SQL Server, SQLite, any database, right? So just go ahead and run this code, write this code on your editor, and try to run it. You may have to just use some databases may require your username and password. Milan, this is the answer. So you can actually go to this link express.js, and you in guide you will find database integration. So let's move on to a next question. Bala says, what if you want to run both on browser and server? Which module I will use? I think CommonJS can be used in that case, or even maybe ES Next can be used, if I'm not wrong. But yes, CommonJS is something which can be used at both the places right now. Which is faster, Node.js, TypeScript, React. I mean, now not that's that, as I already mentioned, that's not the comparison we generally do. You cannot compare TypeScript, React. So you have to convert. Maybe you have to, if you have to like compare, you may choose React one versus Angular, which I generally hate. But if you have to compare like Node.js, so you may have to talk about the frameworks which are available. Or Node.js can be compared with the technologies like .NET or Java, which is most suitable to use in .NET technology. So remember, every technology has their own implementation. For example, if I go to .NET already had ASP.NET MVC, right, which we can actually use, and it allows you to create a web application as well. I think it is depending on what your client needs or what your organization needs. Most of the time, we developers are not responsible for choosing the stack. It is already chosen for us, and then we have to work on it. But if you have to actually give suggestion, in case you are already a .NET developer and you are very comfortable writing your .NET code, go ahead and use ASP.NET web APIs. And on front end, you can use maybe Angular, React, or whichever framework you think you are comfortable with. So this is the stack you can always suggest. Can we have an example of server-side and client-side app using Node.js? One scenario. I mean, Milan, maybe you. So this is. I'm not sure if it is visible, but you can see in my name there is @Santosh Yadav Dev. I forgot to inform that's my Twitter handle. Or you can also find me with the same name on LinkedIn as well. So if you can ping me, I will share some links. Right. So I can share some sample application where you can, which you can refer to. That would be great. And how do we connect? I think Milan had the question how we can connect SQL Server. I think that is already answered. You can just refer to the Express.js doc and you will be able to see. Can we use middleware technology like Entity Framework with Node.js? I mean, adding Entity Framework with Node.js. So if you want to do something like that, so if I'm not wrong, you are talking about ORMs, sorry. So ORMs, yes, they are available in Angular, in Node.js as well. For example, there is something known as Mongoose, which is an ORM, and there are many ORMs like that, right? So if I go to Node.js, maybe Node.js ORM, so you have Sequelize. There is something known as, there are many type ORM, right? So this is what I was looking at. So you have type ORM, Sequelize. These are different ORMs which are available. So it is just similar to what you have, right, in Entity Framework. So you write code first approach. If I'm sorry, code first approach, right? So this is what you are looking at. So you can use maybe any just search for Node ORMs and you will get your answer. Can we use okay, so Prince has a question, are we required to learn TypeScript to use in Node.js? The Prince answer is no, you don't. But in case you learn it, that's good, because you know how to convert your application, or you can actually convert your application to any JavaScript version possible. For example, if you are right now, as of today, your all the browsers support ES 2015, and let's say in future your requirement is you have to migrate your entire application to use ES 2020 maybe. If you're using or if you're writing your TypeScript code, you have to just change one configuration, right? So if I can go to this and say, let's compile my application to ES 2020 and just run TSC, and that's it. Your entire migration is done. Maybe there might be some deprecation, but which is very rare. So this is what you can do, right? This is the advantage of TypeScript. So it's a TypeScript is a language which is scalable. What you mean by scalable is I can convert it to any version which I need, whatever I want to support, right? So this is ES 2020 version. I hope I answered your question, Prince. Sung Chin Kim, hi. May I ask some question? Please go ahead and do that. I mean, I'm just please ask. Keep these questions coming. Is Angular not a heavy framework compared to MVC? Look, Yogesh, so in case you are writing your server-side programming, it's already heavy. So if I have to actually compare if Angular is better or if I have to your ASP.NET days, right, where we used to create ASPX pages, or let's say talk about MVC, where we used to create CSS pages, they are always heavy because the reason being, for every request, the request goes to server, it gets compiled, and you get the output, right? So there is always a round trip which happens in server-side programming languages. Otherwise, there was no use case for having this front-end programming, front-end frameworks or libraries, right? The only use case was, okay, now what is happening is whenever you request for something, it goes to server, processes it, and then gives you the page, and which is not, of course, feasible, right? So the best way to actually do that is just serve the HTML, and that's what Angular does, or even React or Vue does. Can I use CoffeeScript to develop web apps? And CoffeeScript for, I'm sure it does, because CoffeeScript is nothing but one of the variation of JavaScript. So, but I'm sure if I have to choose now between CoffeeScript and any other thing, I will go to TypeScript. So rather than actually using CoffeeScript, I think I'll suggest you to learn about TypeScript. That will be really great. I mean, you can see a lot of places where you can actually use TypeScript. Uh, Ganesh has a question. Is it possible to develop native mobile apps with Node.js? If yes, then how would it work without installing Node.js in mobile? So Ganesh, this you have some frameworks. Like for example, if I want to convert your application to, let's say, native mobile app, right? So you have something known as Ionic. I'll take an example of Ionic framework. Ionic framework supports Vue, React, and Angular. It supports all three. You can actually write your code using any of this framework or libraries, and then you can convert that code to native apps by using the what you can say, the tools which is provided by Ionic framework. This is how you do it, right? So of course you need something extra which is provided by Ionic framework, or you have many other frameworks, for example NativeScript. So NativeScript is another framework which allows you to convert your applications to mobile apps. And I'm talking about native websites. So you can actually create a Android build or iOS build and then run it anywhere. And you don't need Node.js to be installed. Node.js is something which will be used only for like your development purpose. Can we use Elastic? Krishna has a question. Can we use Elastic container in AWS in Node.js? Yes, why not? Sure. You just need to find out the package which is available and then use it. So I think if I'm not wrong, in guide database integration, you also have Elasticsearch here. So you can go ahead and use Elasticsearch as well. Uh, Krishna, right? So you can actually go ahead and do that. All the if I, let's go back to the cloud technologies, right? You may wonder, can I actually write or interact with my cloud-based platform using Node.js? Yes, that's possible. For example, if I go to Azure, right? So Azure Node.js SDKs. So there are multiple Node.js SDKs which are available to interact with your Azure pipeline. For example, this SDK supports right now ARM services, Azure services. So you can see, okay, what are the different modules which are supported. So you have Azure Graph, scheduler, storage, batch, So everything is available here, right? So all the cloud providers actually they have their own packages which is available to interact with Node.js runtime. AWS also has the similar packages. Even if I go to GCP also has the packages. So even if you go to GCP documentation, you will find there are some examples in all the technologies. For example, let's see AWS products and databases, right? So if I go to, let's say, Cloud Bigtable, and let's see if there are some examples. Yep, this is uh, this Kickstart Code Lab. Hmm. So they give you example in all the programming languages mostly. So you will be, I think this is something which does not require your connect code to be written. So maybe working with data, managing tables, creating a table. So this is okay, this is something where you don't need the code, but you will find most of the this cloud platforms, right? Whenever they you will see some documentation, they always mention .NET, of course. You will find Java, you will find Node.js is already adopted by many big names, so they have to actually provide the documentation for the same. So you will also find some example how you can interact with that. uh, Hari has a question: state management supported by Node.js? Yes, why not? I mean, of course, you can go ahead and do that. Maybe in case you want to use Redis, you can use Redis, or maybe if you think about any other state management solution for server side, you can actually go ahead and use that. If maybe you can use what you can say Firebase, for example, right, for managing your state in your Node.js application or server side application, that's possible. So yes, the answer is yes, it is supported. Cool. So that lost lot of questions. Please come, keep them coming in case you have any more. Let's otherwise let's go back to this diagram again, right? So you have your JS, which I have shown you, right? So HTTP file system, all these APIs are available. Then you have your Node.js bindings and C++ add-ons. So this is a middle layer, and then of course base is your V8 engine. There are something called as libuv, which is for thread pool, event loop, and everything. And then there are some C modules which are available: HTTP parcel, open SSL. These are just available in case you want to you want to interact with HTTPs, so that's possible. What is basic difference between commons? I'm not sure what your question is, Yogesh. So if I have, so this is first layer, right? Node.js API, which is actually written by Node.js team. So most of the native APIs, for example, which is if I talk about native APIs, I'm referring to the APIs which can be accessed inside your web. So let's see that. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So if I inspect and go to here and just press window. So window has a lot of objects, right? So every what you can say every native API is actually run inside window object, and you can see there are many, right? So you have gadgets. I think there are modules for web, Bluetooth as well, which is evolving, right? So you can also access your ports if possible using your web application. So these all APIs are also available inside most of the APIs. I'm not talking about all the APIs, but most of the APIs are also available in Node.js. They are trying to fill that gap. Sorry. For example, local storage. I think local storage was recently added inside Node.js as well. So they are trying to fill that gap. So maybe one day you will be able to find all the package, all the actually APIs, web APIs available inside Node.js as well. AMD and CommonJS module. So they are different loaders, Yogesh. So if I have to tell you, I mean, the difference is how they are loaded. For example, if I'm using CommonJS, I can use require, this one, right? So generally I use require in case of CommonJS, but in case it's AMD, UMD, they have their own different configuration how you load them. Uh, if I go to system.js, that it has different configurations. So that's the thing which differs, Yogesh. Hari has a question. Node.js based, Node.js object based or object oriented. If object oriented, create. Why we choose Node.js instead C# or Java? Node.js is not a programming language, Hari. So as I already mentioned, Node.js is not a programming language. It's a runtime. So it's neither object oriented or it's not even object based. So it's a runtime. Your language is actually TypeScript or JavaScript. So that's the language which you are talking about. So TypeScript is of course follows the object oriented concept. You can create classes and everything inside TypeScript, and most of the syntax, this object oriented syntax, is also available in JavaScript. And JavaScript supports object oriented programming. It does. You can actually go ahead and use all the concept which is available in OOPS. For example, classes, you can use inheritance, polymorphism, and it is available from a longer time. The only thing was the syntax was really tedious, or you can say difficult to remember. With ES6, those gaps are actually filled. You can actually go ahead and use, for example, if I want to create another class and extend a class, generally this is what you do. So for example, class, I'll create another class manager, and then I can just use extends keyword and give my employee class, and then this is how your inheritance happens. And let's try to run it in ES5 mode and see what is the output. ES5 and TSC. So let's go back to ts.js. So you can see you have manager, and so in JavaScript days, so you have to something use underscore extends, which means that there was a way to actually do inheritance way before we can actually do it using ES6 syntax, and then manager underscore super. This was the syntax to achieve the same. So it does support object oriented programming, object oriented concepts. I mean JavaScript. The only thing is with TypeScript or ES6, the syntax has become easier to write. Okay, so what we can do is let's move back to slide, and we will see few more slides. Maybe in case you have any question, please feel free to ask. Mhm. Okay, so this is just runtime and everything. The event loop is something which many people do ask in interviews as well. So actually, Node.js is single threaded, so it cannot be actually, it's not multi-threaded programming language. For example, if I talk about Go is multi-threaded by default, and you can actually use multi-threading inside another languages. For example, in .NET, if I'm not wrong, in .NET we had some classes, right? So by using which you can actually use the concept of multi-threading. uh, I'm sure it was introduced in .NET 4 or after that. So in Node.js, what happens is whenever you have asynchronous calls, it actually maintains a queue. So this is what this is the thread pool which we are talking about. This is the queue. So in case you have any asynchronous call, I'm sure everyone knows about asynchronous call. I don't have to tell you that. So if there is any asynchronous call, actually what JavaScript does is actually it puts that into the queue, and it moves ahead and goes on executing the rest of the code. And once the uh, the code which is asynchronous code returns some what you can say response, it gives back to the JavaScript thread, says okay, this is something which was given to me, and now I have completed my task, and let's go ahead and give the response back to the application. So that's generally what happens inside event loop. It's single threaded, so it's not multi-threaded. So in case you are writing Node.js code and you are deploying it, and you are expecting that it should be able to use multiple threads, multiple processors, it won't be possible. So what you have to do is you have to maybe convert, in case you have a like very heavy consuming application or memory consuming application, you may have to move on to, let's say, use something known as let's talk about pm mod pm for Node.js. In case you want to create an production of APIs using Node.js, I would suggest you to try this PM2, because it takes care of your memory consumption. So you otherwise you have to always go ahead and say once. your like memory is full, you have to always go ahead and do it, clean up manually, which is of course not a thing to do in production, right? So PM2 is good. It is actually a process manager which is available, and you can in case you are aware of Heroku uses PM2 by default. In case you are creating your own infrastructure, go ahead and install PM2 on your server so you can utilize it. It's a process management. It actually also gives you a dashboard, which process is being which process consumes how much memory. So everything is actually given by PM2. You can get all the details. Okay, so in case you have any more questions, I can take that. And in case you want to learn more about TypeScript, there are courses which are available on .NET Tricks. And if in case you want to actually code along while actually uh, trying those code, you can actually use TypeScript lang.org. It provides you a integrated environment, so it gives you a playground, and you can actually go ahead and use it as well. How can we debug an application in Node.js? Milan, it's as simple as what we used to do in JavaScript, sorry, in C Sharp. So you can actually go ahead and say test. You can just add your breakpoint anywhere you want, for example, here, and you can run, you need a package.json file to be available, which is not available right now, but you can generally do F5, and it will ask you which environment where you want to run it. For example, let's say Node.js, and this is how it runs. So you can see everything is available here. And right now I don't have any index.js file, so it will not go ahead and execute anything, but it's as simple as this, right? So you just need to do F5 and that's it. You can, in case you are using Node.js or you are using Next.js, just press F5 and that's it. Your environment is up. You can just add a breakpoint inside your editor and that's it. Cool. So, any more questions you have? I think there were like pretty good questions. I think this is also something which is recorded. So I think it is going to help a lot of developers as well. And thanks for asking those amazing questions. And in case, I mean, you have any questions related to anything, you can always drop a mail to .NET Tricks support team. They will be very happy to help you. So, and I'll just show you some slides meanwhile. So I'll take a few minutes, more minutes. So there are a lot of person who uses Node.js. Of course, there are many people who uses Node.js. So there are large organizations which are available. Uh, Google also uses at a lot of places. Microsoft, GoDaddy, all big organizations are actually using Node.js as well. Sana says, Yogesh, thank you guys. I mean, thank you, Surbi. Thank you, Surbi. Thank you, Mayur. Thank you, Yogesh. Uh, and there is one question. I'll take this as a last question, maybe, in case. What was the question? What is the tsconfig? Tsconfig.json. So this configuration file is for TypeScript, Gipsana. So this will actually tell you in which version of JavaScript your code is going to be compiled, which type of module it is supposed to support. So CommonJS, or maybe in case I'm writing for web, maybe ES Next. And there are few more properties, which is like really advanced. I mean, you can actually, in case you want to do and get into more detail, I think there is a course available on .NET Tricks. It's like 3 hours course, which will tell you about everything related to this configuration. But just to understand, it's a TypeScript configuration file. Okay, cool. So thank you everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your giving your valuable time on Sunday. It's mostly no one does that. And in case you have any more questions, feel free to connect with support team, or I have given my Twitter handle in my name, so at the rate Santosh Yadav, that Santosh Yadav Dev, that's my Twitter handle. You can always reach out to me on Twitter as well. And in case you are on LinkedIn, I would love to connect with you. You can just find me with the same name, Santosh Yadav Dev, and that's my Twitter. That's my LinkedIn account as well. I'm not on Facebook, so uh, you mostly will not find me there. Or you, I also have my website santoshyadav.dev. You can always find more details about me on santoshyadav.dev as well. Thank you everyone. Thank you Nagur, thank you Gitsana, thank you Navnath, thank you Milan, and have a great week. Thank you Patrick. Thank you
Yeah,
Ari,
thank
thank you Prasanna.
thank you, Santosh sir.
uh,
Thank you guys for joining today webinar. If you will have any query, any doubt, you can drop an email at support@netx.com. We would be happy to help you. And see you guys in the next webinar. Bye.
Bye bye everyone, bye bye.